I think that second time I had to adopt the mentality of if it's meant to kill me, it's meant to kill me. If it's not meant to kill me, it's meant to teach me a lesson. So what is that? How do I learn it? How do I apply it? And I think that's what kind of kept me pushing.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Dead Talks. It's Aria, not Aria, is it?
Aria, yeah, or Ariana, yeah, either way.
What do you prefer?
Aria is probably good for this.
What about in real life?
In real life, Ariana.
Ariana,
Yeah.
Okay. So we have Ariana here. I got introduced through a really good friend. Shout out to Mr. Chris Hallett. Thank you so much for introducing us. As I mentioned before we got started, it's been a little bit since we first initially spoke and tried to make this happen. So I'm kind of going in with a little bit of a forgetful idea of what your stories are.
It's okay.
And which I like, actually. I'm happy I blacked out a little. You mentioned it's mainly about you have a few near-death experiences. Mm-hmm. And so when you say near-death, I feel like it goes a few different ways. I may be misunderstanding it. Is there a difference between a near-death where you just nearly die? I don't know if those we're going to be talking about, or is it a near-death in that you passed and then some weird shit happens?
For me, it was nearly died. I don't have an experience like where I actually died and had something going on.
Nevertheless, still a near-death experience. So I just want to understand from what I'm about to get into.
Yeah.
And it's more than once?
Yeah, three times. Yeah, I had terminal cancer twice and then a car wreck after that.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy you're still here smiling.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Me too.
It's a blessing.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's fantastic.
Seriously. Moment, yeah.
God bless you. So I don't know if you want to start in order or however you want to do it. How do you normally tell your story?
Yeah. Not from the very beginning. Once I was a baby.
No, I don't care for babies right now.
So I moved out. I was living in New Mexico growing up there, and I moved out to LA when I was 18 for music school and got diagnosed with terminal cancer like 3 months into being in school. And at that point, they said that I had 5 years to live with treatment. So I went through chemo and radiation and like 16 different cancer surgeries. And then, long story short, I went into remission for 2 months and had that mini celebration until it relapsed. It came into the temporal lobe of my brain through the lymph nodes here. So then I was given 1 year to live. And in that point, there was kind of the choice of trying as much treatment as we could or not. And I decided to kind of take the natural route because if I really did only have a year, I didn't want to spend it feeling like I did on chemo and all that. And I was in full-time music school throughout the whole thing also. So, so I ended up kind of pursuing more natural remedies. And then I became cancer-free. I was 5 years in remission. On my 1 year cancer-free date, ironically, I was taking a road trip to go celebrate being cancer-free, and I wrecked myself on a highway.
So what's the moral of the story? Don't celebrate things?
Don't celebrate anything ever. So, and that's its own story. I don't know how much in depth you want right now. It's a lot. But.
I want all of it, to be honest. I mean,
okay.
I have so many questions already, but I don't know if you want to, if you hold my questions or whatnot.
Sure. I'll finish the end part. So I wrecked my car, 80 miles an hour cruise control. I passed out in the driver's seat because the elevation was climbing really high and my body doesn't absorb oxygen like a healthy person's does because of my history of cancer. Mm-hmm. That's their theory, at least. I'm still not 1,000% sure exactly why I passed out or how that happened. But at 80 miles an hour, I went across all of my lanes, across the median, and then across the opposite lanes of traffic and landed on the other side of the highway. And by some miracle, a highway patrolman came about 10 minutes behind me and was like, "This is weird. There's an abandoned vehicle here." They were kind of looking for an ejected body or thinking someone left the car because they couldn't see me at all. And one of the workmen that was with him decided to look for a phone or an ID and opened the car door and found me crunched underneath my steering wheel, like in that little section where your pedals are. And I had broken my skull off of my spine. I had to get that reattached, so I have a bunch of hardware in there. And
off of your spine?
Yeah.
Literally
so
detached?
Internal, yeah. internal detachment or decapitation. Yeah, is what it's called. So I had a brainstem injury and pieces of my occipital bone were stuck in my brainstem. And I had broken all my ribs on my right side by taking the gear shift off with my ribs. And so they helicoptered me to Denver Hospital, and Denver Hospital was like, we can't do anything with her. She's probably just not going to make it. So then they helicoptered me to, they helicoptered me first to Casper Hospital, and then they helicoptered me to Denver. And Denver, there was a surgeon there from Germany, and he saved my life.
Fucking Germans.
Thank goodness. For
that
surgery.
Yeah,
goodness.
for that surgery.
So, yeah. And then I had to relearn how to walk and talk and do all my motor skills and everything. And that was last year. I crashed in 2020. So I'm 1 year out of recovery just a few months ago.
Oh my God. I didn't realize it was that recent.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you look attached.
Thank you.
How do you feel?
That was step one, a reattachment. I feel kind of a little bit like an alien. I feel like I'm acting a lot of the time, still getting used to doing things. When you're first learning stuff, it's very much a process. Like everything, you have to put your hand around the bottle, then you lift the bottle to your mouth, and then you drink from the bottle. Like everything is in sequence. And so still sometimes my brain has to think that way about how I move my body. And so, it's a little bit nerve-wracking to just pretend to be normal.
I mean, I don't understand how you feel at all. I just feel like the Grim Reaper is just, all right, well, done with this girl. Jesus Christ, you're dodging death. It's amazing.
Thank you.
But I feel like that's got to be such a mixed bag of emotions of, I don't know what that does to you.
Yeah.
3 times going through the ringer of, especially the third experience is totally different from being told you have X amount of days to live. So stop me if you have more that you want to say in regards to what you just told me. But even the first or second time that, when you came back with cancer or had cancer and then came back with cancer, where's your head at? Like how much of it did you believe that you were did you believe the doctor? How much of it was, I'm going to fight, I'm not going to die? Was there any kind of, what was the dialogue within yourself when they first told you?
Yeah. So the first time, honestly, all the emotions were kind of opposite from what you expect them to be. And I feel like you hear this a lot from different cancer patients of like, the only experience a lot of us has is our movies, Hallmark movies, or maybe a family member. My grandma passed from cancer, but that was a very brief experience. And I'm a very emotional person. Like I feel things very deeply, but when I was told, I just went numb. Like I just didn't feel anything. And obviously a defense mechanism. And I think I had to work through the steps of grief for my own self, for my own body. And then when the second time when I was diagnosed was certainly harder and heavier emotionally, because I went from the highest high of like, I've just beat cancer, I'm ready to celebrate, and I did it, to, oh, we're back at square one. And I think that second time I had to adopt the mentality of, if it's meant to kill me, it's meant to kill me. If it's not meant to kill me, it's meant to teach me a lesson. So what is that? How do I learn it? How do I apply it? And I think that's what kind of kept me pushing.
Yeah, perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just mentioned, I literally had another recording remotely today, and I referenced, for anyone, I don't know what order the episodes have come out. I'm sorry for referencing the show The Leftovers again. Have you watched that?
No.
It's been around for a while. My buddy just told me about it. I don't know what the hell is going on. But there was a scene, again, it's just so relevant to what you're saying also in regards to perspective of what you're going through. And there was one quick little scene talking about, you can either choose to see this experience as, with anger or with resentment or just negative attitude towards something happening to you. Like, will you be angry because this is happening to me, or sad? Or will you look at this with the idea that this is supposed to teach me something, and maybe it's a blessing at the end of the day, in some weird, sick way. Yeah. And you chose to see the path that you didn't really pick one, but you also, maybe it sounds like you did, but you chose to see it as like this, maybe I'm going to learn something from this. Yeah. And is that something that you said, that's something that you hung on to?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's so important to go through all of those feelings to get to that place. Like people say that to me a lot. Oh, how are you positive all the time? Or how did you just have such a good perspective about it? And I'm like, I didn't. I went through all of the stages, all of the anger and being pissed off and grieving and being sad and, why the heck did this happen to me? to be able to get to the place of acceptance and, okay, I'm going to learn something. Because I think sometimes we try to just run through all that and be like, I need to be positive. But then we're not dealing with our emotions, and it kind of,
You got to work through it.
caves in. Yeah.
And did you always think like that in regards to knowing you had to work through it? Or was it,
No.
did you ever try to like shove it away?
1,000%. Especially, I'm surrounded by a lot of really positive people, which is great. But when you're going through something that needs to be dealt with and the gravity of it needs to be dealt with, it's hard to hear all the time, oh, but you're going to be okay. Stay strong. You're a fighter kind of thing.
You're a fighter.
And, and so we're like, keep fighting. You're like, thanks, I have to or I'll die. Like,
for real. Thanks for the advice, jackass.
Yeah.
But I get what they're saying. It's not, it's like the intention is there.
Yeah, absolutely. But
Seriously.
you have to go at your own pace. And I definitely was that person that was always positive and, just that's okay. Like, I'll learn a lesson from it. And as an adult have, obviously had to learn you get there by actually dealing with it and not just pretending it will go away.
I mean, how does that carry with you now that you've beaten cancer twice? Is there anything in the back? Like, because since it happened twice, how do you release the fact that it came back? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like obviously, God forbid, and I'm sure you're going to be fine, but like, what is that thought? Does that linger in the back of your mind? How do you get over something like that?
Definitely. Relapse is a real fear, and a lot of people have it. And it's something I used to be scared of all of the time. And I think it's, again, a perspective shift of going from, I don't know if I can deal with this again, that's terrifying, to, well, I've beat it twice, which means I have the tools, I have the strength, I have the things I need, that if I were to get diagnosed again, I could do it again. And I've seen that twice. I have proof of that. And whether or not that's true, it would help me.
Yeah. So what's your opinion on the fact when a doctor tells you you have X amount of times to live and you beat it twice?
Yeah.
Does that give you less faith in doctors? Or what is that?
No, people ask me that a lot of like, well, then the doctors are bad or wrong.
But
and
no,
it's like,
I'm not saying that either.
No,
Just,
They made the most informed decision that they possibly could.
Right.
And I just chose to not believe them. And that's my own thing.
But that's what I'm trying to get at, because I believe in the power of the mind, as corny as that sounds.
Yeah.
But that is, like, when you hear, I feel like you hear it pretty often. I don't know how often, but when like an old senior citizen or someone late in their life loses a partner, and for multiple times that partner nearly dying shortly after.
Mm-hmm.
And you could chalk it up to coincidence, but I think it's a point of literally giving up and losing meaning in life or something of the sort. And that goes back to your perspective and what's going on up here. So I believe in that idea that how you're perceiving it, again, and what your mental aptitude is, can have a tremendous effect on that.
Yeah.
That's why
absolutely.
I think it's really, that's why if you can doubt the doctor in some ways in a strong enough way that you might even be realizing at the time, it could clearly defeat something that you did. I have to believe that is. You did it twice.
Yeah.
You did it twice.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And I think too, like not believing them, but also just trying everything you can. And I've learned in being more public about my story, sharing my story more, especially online, there is so much black and white of like only natural medicine or only Western medicine. And I get flack from both sides. And I'm like, I went through the Western medicine thing. I've tried the natural medicine thing. If you're told that you have a year to live or you're going to die, why wouldn't you try absolutely everything?
Right.
And it so depends on your location too. In America, it's much more heavily immersed in Western medicine, and everywhere else people are like, oh yeah, you did it naturally, cool. Yeah, my cousin did too. It's like very normal.
It's normal elsewhere.
Yeah, right. But not in America. Yeah. Right, so I think that's a big piece of just try everything that you can. And it's so easy when you think of a doctor, kind of the education that they have over us, which is something obviously to be respected and listened to. But at the same time, I think it puts people into fear a little bit sometimes, where they're like, well, if you say I'm going to die, then that's it. End all be all. So I might as well not try anything else.
Right. And yeah, I wish there was a study, if there's not already, about some kind of like how many of the people that have passed to cancer or any kind of terminal illness and what their mentality was. And like the people that did have, the percentage of people that have beaten it and the people that haven't, like if there was some way to understand if they had similarities to what you were thinking, or people that just said like, you know what, I only have a year to live, I'm just going to let it take me and just enjoy life. Like, I wonder if there was a way to study that. I don't know. I'm just going on that was probably thoughts I should have kept in my head, but I was just speaking out loud.
That could be a thing. Absolutely. And I think, and I've also seen it the other way. You know, I've had friends who have fought just as hard, if not harder than I did, and still passed, you know, and it's just, you just don't know.
And that's the thing. I wonder, even though like you can fight, you can be a fighter. Like for instance, you go into a boxing ring, I'm gonna give it my all. I'm gonna fight this motherfucker I'm gonna fight Mike Tyson. I'm gonna give him a fight of his life, but deep down, you know, you're not gonna beat Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
So there's two different ways of going into a fight. Like you know you're gonna fight. Like for instance, I'm gonna go fight Mike Tyson. That's a terrible example because I won't even survive stepping into the ring. But if I'm an actual fighter going to fight Mike Tyson, he has that like dominance over his opponent.
Yeah.
And you just like deep down, like I'm not gonna beat this guy, but I'm gonna try. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a difference between trying to fight Mike Tyson and believing you're going to fight Mike Tyson.
1,000%.
So I just wonder, not to diminish anyone that has lost someone to cancer. I have people like that in my family, but sometimes I just wonder to dive into those tough conversations and wonder even the cause of cancer. That's like, there's so many different schools of thought about the cause of cancer. Mm-hmm. And if you don't mind me being so like upfront about this kind of topic, I spoke to a guy named Bruce Lipton, who's a biologist, gets his slack, but he's someone that says, you know, cancer is preventable in a sense of it comes from periods of stress, this and that. It's not always just a roll of the dice. And I just wonder, have you ever put a shift in perspective of how the cancer came about? Is there, I don't know how you find that or if you can, but is it a question that you've asked of how you got the cancer?
Yeah, 100%. I think it absolutely, our minds affect our bodies all the time. And I absolutely think that I was dealing with a lot of childhood trauma. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the moment I moved away from home and from that trauma, I got cancer. And it was like, hey, you need to learn how to take care of yourself, how to ask for help, how to deal with self-love, how to find that, and you need to do it now. Right. And I don't think that that's a coincidence, that timing at all.
It's a relief that you said that because I hate bringing that up. I hate bringing that up to people that like are like I have conversations with friends. Oh, so and so got cancer, and I tread lightly because I don't want to force.
Of course,
thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a sensitive topic, so I got to feel the crowd out. But my belief in what I've heard and studied and from a very average Joe, not knowing what the hell I'm talking about position, that what I've learned from a guy like Bruce and from other people that are way more intelligent than I am, how their belief in the studies through science is that it does come from most cancers and most disease that we get shouldn't happen. Mm-hmm. And obviously there's a percentage of people that are just truly born biologically defected and that happens.
Yeah.
But it is a low percentage apparent according to what he's saying. And that a lot of it stems from stress or from trauma, from experiences that we don't truly release or deal with or hash out that are subconsciously implanted. Mm-hmm. And then it's kind of terrifying and frustrating because I think it's easier to believe, oh, it sucks. Yeah. We got the shit end of the stick and this just happened to me. But if we're able to massage out XYZ that's happened early in our life, whether it's stress or certain experiences or trauma, it can be prevented. But it's hard to pinpoint it sometimes, you know. Mm-hmm. And then how do you tell someone that's already going through cancer?
Yeah.
But I think it is preventative in a sense that if we can just truly learn to live a type of life that, oh God, but it's fucked up. You know, it's fucked up at the same time to even say that. But,
yeah. I mean, I think even taking the disease out of it, it's like for myself personally, it's like that's like everything in life, you know, like you lose a job or you lose friends. And I used to hold on to that and be like, oh my gosh, like the world is against me or this is an awful thing that I've been dealt. And in reality, it's like, hey, the universe or God or whatever you may or may not believe in, like it's removing those things from your life. That's on purpose because you are growing further. Mm. And the same thing with cancer. It's like, this is meant to teach you something, you know? But when you're faced with that, it's so frustrating. And sometimes, because I love that you're just saying what's on your mind, I think that death is included in that. Death is absolutely included in that, which is why in my mindset I was like, if it's meant to kill me, it's meant to kill me. And if the meaning of that was because it was supposed to help my dad, a lesson for him, or help the friends around me, or, you know, whatever it may be, that is what it's supposed to be. And I didn't feel it was. I felt it was something else for myself, but also had to have that acceptance of like, all right, this is going to be whatever lesson it's supposed to be. But if it is that I need to implement something and share it, then I need to do that.
Do you have a religious background or belief system?
I do not. But my dad kind of raised me as like, here, come to all of these churches and all these different places of worship and like see
That's
what you
cool.
like and educate yourself. And yeah, so I call myself spiritual. Like I definitely believe in a higher power and
You're spiritually eclectic.
eclectic. Yeah, I like that.
I just love that word eclectic. So I gotta say it.
But I definitely, I absolutely believe in something bigger, and I'm more like a manifestation energy kind of person. But I feel like so is everybody, and religion is kind of the same thing all around. We're all talking about the same thing in different languages. I feel like.
Yeah, I remember. So my another homie, Salim.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Roommates with Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the greatest.
Oh,
they're all the greatest
love
people
him so
in the
much,
world.
yeah.
I love them all. I had a conversation with him about, I guess, just religions in general, and he was like, they're all saying the same motherfucking thing, in different ways. Obviously, there's some exceptions and spectrums to it, but
Yeah.
a lot of them are telling the same story in different ways, and whether it's like they believe in something, this is a different name, or the story might be a little different. But a lot of time, we're all kind of saying the same thing, and I feel like we're all kind of spiritual in our own sense. So I don't know. And the reason I asked that is because you're saying what's meant to be. So I was curious where that belief system comes from.
Yeah.
And clearly it's comforting in some way. You know what I mean?
It is. Yeah. And I think that I do have a purpose here, and we have all of us have purposes. But I don't know necessarily what that is or where it stems from. I would love to know. I don't think I ever will. And that's kind of part of the beauty of it. But
yeah, the mystery is terrifying to a lot of people. People fear what we don't know. Hence, why people I think often fear death.
Yep.
But it's fun. It's interesting how you try to find meaning. Maybe this is a lesson for someone else or for something, whatever it is. My buddy, dropping a lot of shout outs to really good people in my life. But Mr. Zito is another person that has a more religious background. He's a professor in theology. And I remember, I don't know how old we were maybe in high school. We were in the car. I think I was dropping him off. And he mentioned, somehow it came up about what I went through with my dad. And he said something of the sort about, he referenced something in the Bible. I can't quote that shit, but something of the sort like I had carried that burden for others to realize. And he was saying it in a very nice way that I'm not really the best at taking compliments or however he was trying to explain it. About like I went through this experience for other people to realize what I went through, because it was a very It definitely was clear. I saw it visually how impactful what my family went through and other families in the area through 9/11, because it was so public, so it was hard to hide. And people were affected by that. I remember I saw one of my friends cry right in front of me during like the service a while after we knew my dad wasn't coming back. I was like, shit. Like I saw my friend who's a guy, besides all the girls that were crying, had that impact through what happened to me. And you just never know, because sometimes you don't have those conversations with people, the impact that your experience can have on someone else.
Yeah.
And he was explaining it like, maybe you got to carry this burden for other people to realize. But I've also spoke to people that are like, that's bullshit. I don't want to hear that shit. I carry this burden for you guys. That's why my so-and-so died. So it's like, it's all how you look at it.
Yeah, it really is. I feel that way a lot, that like my purpose here is to turn people's fear into love. And it's like, however I do that, through sharing my story, through music, through personal relationships, whatever it is. But I think that someone asked me that the other day, because I get asked so often, it's the number one question, like, what did this change about you, or how did it change you? And I was having a conversation with a friend, like really down to earth personal one, not like, yes, use your traumas as your strength, which is like my usual MO, but like really actually how I feel about it. And I said, honestly, I think this has helped everyone else around me so much more than it has ever helped me. And I have still a hard time coming to terms with that, of like, okay, cool, well, I'm helping everybody else, but like, when is my thing, or when is my gift coming, or when is my time, which is just the ego.
Right.
But I really do think sometimes that is the case. Like, it helps so many people to see that and see someone go through that, and it makes them feel like, oh, well, if she did that, I can deal with this thing that may seem lesser,
Yeah, I mean, that's the big basis on why we're talking right now. Besides,
Yeah.
what I've learned, which is great to hear, which I didn't even think about it when I started this, about how therapeutic it can be for me and the person speaking. But it's to share your story, to hear other people learn through you. And I've always been a believer in learning through other people's experiences. There's nothing like getting thrown in the fire and experiencing things yourself. That's as real as it gets. But there is a lot of lessons through other people's mistakes, other people's successes. Like even looking at like my sister's relationship with their husbands, like I can see the beauty of it, and that I try to apply that in relationships that I have. Even though I haven't experienced it, I can see that.
Yeah.
Whether I'm just relating to other examples outside of loss, but yeah, there is a lot of lessons that people, what you can get through other people if you're aware enough for that. Some people just see it and don't think about it.
Yeah.
So back at the importance of perspective, I think there's a clear importance of awareness. I think that's what consciousness is. That's what consciousness is. It's a level of awareness, and we have to be more aware. And that is like, that's how you're going to absorb and learn. Because if you're not aware and cognitive of someone listening, people can hear your conversation, but they're not listening. You know what I mean? That's the level of awareness.
Yeah.
Fat tire is great.
At this point, we need like 16
I
more
know,
of these
seriously.
now.
I'm sitting Indian style, and I can't just eject from my seat. But I mean, I'm kind of going backwards right now. But
That's fine.
what were the second time you heard you had cancer? What path did you take? So you said you took a more homeopathic.
Yeah, I always preface with I'm not promoting anything. I can't cure cancer.
This is not financial or physical health advice.
This is just what I used. No, I did not lick tree bark and take.
You didn't go to ayahuasca?
I didn't. No, although I might have helped. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah. So I had. I kind of adopted that different mindset, and then I started looking at my body in a way of like how to create an environment where cancer cells couldn't live. And so I started researching like alkalinity and pH levels of the blood in the body and oxygenation. And it said that cancer cells have a really hard time growing and multiplying in an environment that's alkaline and oxygenated. So I just tried to create that environment in my body, like via different water, different exercise patterns, mainly food, cruciferous veggies, like all of these things. And it really helped. It really minimized everything, and the cells decreased and decreased every scan. And again, it's something that I feel like in America, people are like, it's this huge miraculous thing. You cured your own cancer. And a lot of people outside the country are like, yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, take care of your body. But I was always very healthy. My dad's like very natural, like health food guy. So it wasn't like I was eating awful. It was just being more conscious about that and just looking at the science of it. And again, it doesn't work for everybody. And I also could have just eaten a bunch of kale and got really lucky.
And so on the second, when you took that turn, what was the difference of what was your different perspective or mentality from the first time to the second time? Was there a difference?
I think the first time the treatment plan was more set out for me, and it was like, okay, well, we think you probably have about 5 years, but if you have chemo and you have surgeries and you have radiation and all these things, like you will, there's a better prognosis. And the doctors kind of just set it out for me. And also because it was the first time I'd ever been hit with that, I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, just fix it.
Yeah,
like, what?
Shit out, bro.
Yeah, I was 18. I was like, I'm a kid. So
damn, 18.
Yeah. And just moved to LA and like figuring I didn't know who I was. So yeah, and versus the second time, I kind of had some experience under my belt and was like, all right, well, you're telling me I'm going to die in a year, and maybe that's true. But if I really only have a year, then like, hell yeah, I'm going to try everything I can. Yeah.
Did you have the second, since you like, I beat it once kind of thing, that help at all?
Yeah.
Or did it scare the shit out of you?
Well, both. Definitely both. The beginning part of it was just like absolute depression and sadness, and I was like at the lowest low because it was so different from learning the first time. Just kind of came out of like a general base feeling versus learning the second time came from, oh my God, I just beat cancer.
Yeah.
This is awesome, to immediately like, no, just kidding. You have a year after this whole fight that you've done. So
yeah, the ebbs and flows of that, I feel like has shock value at those baselines, at the precipice and also the base. It's like, those are trauma points as well.
Yeah.
Those are like trauma checkpoints. I'm always interested from you as an artist standpoint, have these experiences helped your lyrics?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they always, we always say like we don't write anything good when we're happy. It's true. So
that's why I think Eminem fell off a little bit. Even though Eminem is still a lyrical genius. I don't care what you say about his music, but he's still a lyrical genius. Anyway,
yeah,
go on.
It's like, no, I have to stay sad and sick and single. Like, don't be happy, don't be it, because your music's gonna suck.
Yeah.
But no, I think. Honestly, I've started writing some like more happy stuff, inspirational stuff, because I'm trying, because I know listening to that music helps me. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, Ariana, for the people. But for me, for my catharsis, always sad. Yeah. But yes, the lyrics have gotten much better.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like art in general stems from a lot of art, not all of it obviously stems from a fucking deep, dark place.
Mm-hmm.
That's where a lot of the greatest art comes from. And that's why I wonder why that translates to so many amazing artists passing at should happen at a young age.
Yeah,
You see
27.
someone like Ozzy Osbourne who just injects himself with whatever. I don't really inject. I didn't mean to say that, but he partied hard and he's like still kicking. So you wonder how the hell that happens.
Yeah.
I don't know. So how do you feel about everything today? Like throughout your experiences and like, what's your perception of life? It's a deep question, but or even death in that sense. Like, what is your perception of the fragility of life or your fear of death?
Yeah.
It's not even one question.
That's okay. I feel, I'm definitely not afraid to die. I'm definitely not afraid of death. I'm definitely not afraid of pretty much anything in life anymore either. And I don't say that in a boastful way. I just say that in like, I used to be scared of a lot of things, and it's changed, I think, a lot of how I live and how I experience things. I don't wait for things anymore. If I want something, I say it. I always am direct. I always communicate. I go after what I want, and so much less worried about what everybody thinks of me, because we truly just don't have time. We just don't. And I think that with cancer, it's a slower burn, at least from my experience. It was like a very slow thing, but the crash, because it too is so recent and was so immediate, it was like created an urgency around my life. People don't have an urgency around their life. And it's like, well, this thing can wait, or I'll tell this person whenever, I'll fix this thing whenever. It's like, you could literally walk out your door right now and die. And I didn't realize that really, truly until I got in that wreck. Because it was just so instantaneous. And I will say the moment before, every time I've had that experience, whether it was a loved one or myself, when you're kind of on that precipice of like thinking you might pass or being told you might pass, you think you're going to be scared and the ego is scared, but it is the most peaceful experience. And I've heard other people say that too, and it's so true. You have all of this fear in you, but then when it's at that moment, it's like, it's all okay. It's all just, nothing matters. It's just complete peace. Yeah. So that's what I have to say about that.
That's what I have to say about that. That was fantastic. It's it's a perspective that I can't even fathom. I don't even know what that's like. But I mean, it's crazy. We just focus so much time on the cancer, which is enough in itself. But to have an experience like where you're told you're going to die, and then you have an experience that's so sporadic.
Yeah, different.
The two contradict. They're literally like the opposite sides of the spectrum. And I have that conversation here all the time about people that they know something's going to happen or it's happening through disease or whatever, and then something abrupt, like what happened to my dad or whatever it might be. And so that's a total. I don't want to say that's more impactful. I'm curious what you think about it, but when something happens completely out of nowhere, even though being told you have cancer, that's obviously out of nowhere. But then you have like a lingering time, but something like you experienced just like a snap of the finger.
Yeah.
I can imagine how much that's even more of like a wake up call, besides the fact that you've already experienced what you experienced. So it's wild that it's like someone knew that, okay, she needs one more right hook, and then she'll figure this shit out. And now she's really gonna start living.
100%. Yeah. Needed to. Yeah. Yep. Blow my butt off the freeway. It was like, all right.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it wasn't even drinking and driving. It was like just another freak fucking thing.
And there's still such a, I'm like so careful where I talk about it, but
no, don't be careful.
I don't believe them. Okay. I don't believe that I passed out from elevation, because I've driven from here to where I'm from, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and that's 7,000 feet elevation. I have never had a problem. And that was like 10 years of cancer and oxygen problems. And before.
So what do you think it is?
I don't know. I have no idea. I think it was like a higher power thing that was like, this needs to happen right now. And whether elevation or my oxygen level was a part of it that made it happen. But even the fact that like when I hit the median, which is what broke my neck, like the only reason I didn't break everything in my body was because I was passed out.
You were just loose?
Yeah. Like why drunk drivers is kind of the similar thing. They thought that I had a stroke because half of my face was like drooped down, how a stroke victims is.
No sign of a seizure?
No. But what they realized was because I had pieces of bone in my brainstem was why that happened. Sorry.
No, don't. That's me, not you.
Why that happened. But Yeah.
Oh,
So I don't know. There could be a million things. Chris thinks that it was maybe an alien abduction.
Of course he does.
We talked about that a lot.
Alien abduction, they just dropped you off on the other side
Well,
of the
he's
road?
like,
What does that mean?
just because how I was found, he's always like, it just doesn't make sense. It just looks like some aliens were like, yeah, I don't know, this goes here and this probably goes here, and like, I don't know, let's
They
like,
picked you up, oh, wrong girl.
yeah, exactly.
Just dropped you off the other side of the highway.
Honestly, at this point, I'm like, maybe. But I needed it. Oh man, I needed it so bad. And my dad called my best friend whose house I was on the way to. And, obviously she was upset. And he goes, Ariana, and you have to have faith because you know her. And you know that in a little while, she's going to call you up and she's going to tell you that it's the best thing that's ever happened to her. And it was probably more so to comfort her. But then a few months later, I called her and said that. She starts bawling. I don't understand why. And she's like, yeah, your dad said that you would say that. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely.
And that's how you see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you kidding me? The amount of energy I used to expend on people, on toxicity, on second guessing myself, on worrying if other people liked me, on worrying if I was handling situations correctly. I had all of these toxic friend groups kind of blowing up, and so many people left me during the crash. And it was like, hey,
What does that mean? Why?
Like people that just exited my life because people don't like to be faced with other people's trauma, nonetheless their own. And it just made me realize, because I'm the person that I'm always like, oh, is it my fault? Like, what did I do? And I realized, like, I'm dying in a hospital bed. There's literally nothing I could have done to you.
No.
This is clearly a you problem,
Yeah.
which helped me kind of create how I interact with other people, where I give 100% of my energy to people who are the life and death supporter kind of people, half of my energy to the people that have that intention but haven't learned how to do it yet, and absolutely none of my energy to the people that are innately selfish. And meaning I don't even try to fix stuff anymore. I don't. I used to worry about that so much. Like, I need to fix it, or I need, obviously I'll communicate and try to fix if there's an issue. But if something just isn't working, or if someone is placing blame on you that isn't yours to carry, it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. You choose, and that was the most powerful thing. Like, you choose where you put your time and energy. And everyone else's actions are a reflection of them, as cheesy as it sounds, and yours are a reflection of you. So I would be pouring my energy into this toxicness, being like, why am I surrounded by so many toxic people? Or I'm being treated so badly. It's like, yeah, Ariana, look inside. You're giving them energy. Take that, start putting it towards the people that are loving you well, and you're going to feel more loved.
Oh, God, I need that. It's so fucking true.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I still have problems with it all the time. But it's 1,000% better than it used to be.
Yeah, you get better at it. I think people are like, you reach eternal happiness, but it's like, no, even the people that are most happy, you're still going to have your run through the mill. And you just get better at it.
Yeah,
You
they're always
shorten
growing.
those time periods of misery.
Yes.
That's what I think it is. I think it's kind of like, maybe I've said this before, but you're pissed off for like in a week, and then all of a sudden it's like a day, 2 days, and all of a sudden maybe it might take 10 minutes for you just to release that shit. Like, I'm good.
That's what I say to people at my past relationships. I'm like, well, it took me a shorter and shorter time to realize the toxicity of this.
Yeah.
Which is progress.
Yeah, it's fucking progress. And I don't know. And then I had a thought and I think I forgot about it. What was it? It was something, what were we just talking about before? Like 3 thoughts ago. That's not going to help.
Exactly 3. Let me see.
It's funny because when I have these conversations, one thing I don't want to do is think about what I'm going to say next, because I want to be honed in on what the person's saying. And I feel like that's part of my duty of being where I'm at right now. And then but while we're talking about, I got to let it go. Whatever the thought was, maybe it'll come back, or maybe it wasn't that important.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I think it's crazy where you are right now, considering what you've gone through. And I don't know. I always wonder if you put someone else in your position, if someone else would handle it the same way, or everyone would still be somewhere different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's amazing to see the perspective that you have. This is the first time I'm really talking, first time I'm seeing you in person.
Yeah.
And this, I hope people have the awareness to listen to a story like yours, including myself, not my story, including myself, of listening to what you said, and have the awareness to take that and use it. Because I've said many times, and I've said recently, how like a tragedy or a significant occurrence in your life can be the biggest educator into shifting your perspective and shifting how you live your life and shifting your path in a positive way. That I don't want people to wait for an experience like that or wait for tragedy to make those realizations. And that's why I believe in the importance of this conversation to share your story so people can learn through you, like we said before, and apply the lessons that you've learned and take it wherever they need to take it. You don't take everything, even though I think they should take everything. But I just hope people can take it and run with it. And I feel like there's always temporary inspiration in life that we get these we see a video, we get jolted. Oh my God, I'm gonna do this. And tomorrow we get back into the same shit. So it's a blend of taking what you just said and really letting that sit. So I feel like listening through conversations like this, like I need to like sit on what you said, let that shit marinate. And so I can run with that as opposed to just being inspired right now. I'm sitting across from you and then for not forgetting it, but like getting sucked into the loop of life of all this other bullshit.
I love that.
Do you ever struggle with, is that you ever still like, not forget, but momentarily disengage from what you've experienced where you get back into the same loop of bullshit of what doesn't really matter and what's trivial? And you have to be like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This is what I went through. I have to remember that.
All the time.
Yeah. How do we not, I don't want to break that. I guess this is life. Is that just part of it?
Yeah. I think it is. I think it's that, I had a good probably year post crash of just every day being in awe, living in what I call radical amazement. And I would just, touch my legs.
Radical amazement. That sounds like something Chris would say. You guys don't know Chris, but I think he's coming on the podcast at some point. So anyway.
But I'd like touch my legs and like just start crying because they worked. And just like these tiny little things. And then, I'm a human. So as I started getting back into life and work and all these things, like absolutely. You lose it. And it's so easy to get wrapped up in like these trivial things. And I think what you said is so important of like, there's this big inspirational piece, but not everybody has lived all of the melodrama that I've lived. And they think, well, I just have like these little problems. And what I always say is all problems are valid. And my worst day is my worst day. Your worst day is your worst day. It's not a competition. My pain doesn't invalidate someone else's. And I think putting it, whatever I've said, whatever hits, into digestible little pieces and actionable pieces is something that helps you not lose it. That's what helps me remind myself of the things that I've been through is like the certain things that I have in my routine, the certain reminders that I write down, because I still, even though being the person who went through it, have to remind myself every day.
Yeah, that's part of life. I think we just have natural ADD. And also, we don't have to get into it, but like one thought about something that you've gone through like that, there is so much of an impact to the people around you. I know we talked about positive, but even though you're the one that went through it, like I don't know how close you are with your family, we don't have to get that depth, but like your friends, your family that do love you, how much that affects the people around you.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? That's a whole nother conversation. You're the one that experienced it, yes, and it's always like that should be the focus, and that's the focus of this conversation because you took the brunt of it. But that recoil of your experience of the people around you, that affects them not only immediately but for the rest of their life as well. So life is just such a ripple effect of events. There's the butterfly effect. I don't know if that's the right thing I'm saying. But, but it's like that. It's like the literally waves of energy that just affect everyone in its path. And those people are all dealing with it. Even the loss that I felt, it affected my brother-in-law's family. It affected my friends. It affects everyone, like, especially that cares for you. So it's like, where you go through the brunt of it, of course. And, you're the eye of the storm. But, there's so many other people that do get affected by grieving, essentially grieving you.
Absolutely.
And you're still here, thank God. But like, imagine hearing your daughter, your or son, whoever is going to die. It's like,
and I will.
It's another podcast.
And I will say that side, hearing everything that I've gone through, that side will always be 1,000 times harder than what I've been through. And I say that with experience as well, like very shortly, but 4 months into my own recovery, my dad had a brain bleed and he's still recovering from that. And I had to jump in a car, relearn how to drive and go save him and do this whole thing. And it was the first time ever after putting him through a decade of my health stuff that it was switched. Right. And it was the hardest thing I've ever been through, was my dad going through that. And absolutely, it's the people on the outside because you want to help. You want to do everything that you can, and you're completely helpless. At least you feel a semblance of control when you're in it.
That's what I feel like you take that, so you have less control. And when you have less control, it probably is just like I can't do anything. Can't do anything. That's crazy. And you said brain bleed. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh my God, you have such there's so many
I know,
dramatic names.
It's like
Internal decapitation.
It's like an episode of Grey's Anatomy.
I know, Jesus Christ.
Look, I too would love it to not
know these words, but fucking life just smacks me in the head.
Yeah.
Well, it's amazing to have shared this space with you. It's just an incredible story, and you know, you got to keep telling this shit, because the more people it touches, the more I think hopefully it'll grab people by the balls or whatever you got down there, you know?
Yeah.
So I do want to thank you for being on here.
Yeah.
You're incredible. I'm really happy to have connected with you.
Thanks.
And aside from that, is there anything you want to share in regards to yourself? You can just mic drop it, whatever the hell you want to say, or if you want to plug in anything you got going on in music or life that you want to have people find you, if you do, or not find you.
Yeah, just I'm Music by Aria on all of the interwebs. And if you want to listen to heart-wrenching music, I'm on Spotify. And I also make videos, like trauma healing videos. So if you feel that would help you, also that. And thank you for doing what you do. This is so important, and people are so scared to talk about this stuff. So thank you.
Well, thank you for not being scared. It's important. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in to another one. I have to be better at saying this, but if you did make it this far on the episode, can you just if you like the episode, just write a review for me and make sure it's good. And if it's bad, don't write it. But for real though, thank you for tuning in, subscribe, follow me, all that shit. And thank you for sharing this space with us. And until next time, another episode of Dead Talks. Ciao. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Dead Talks. Please do not forget to hit the subscribe button and also the notification bell. That'll give you updates as to when we post a new video, more episodes, and more content in general. We are streaming on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and all that. And also find us on Instagram at Dead Talks Podcast or www.deadtalks.net. Thank you so much.